Hello, welcome back to Mr. Miles Maths. This is our third lesson on solving linear equations. We're going to look at dealing with negative x terms, which people always find a little bit weird to start with. And then that'll lead into solving equations with unknowns on both sides of the equation as well. If you haven't watched the video on algebraic simplification, I would strongly recommend that you watch that video first, as lots of those ideas are incorporated in this technique as well. So straight in with question 1, which is going to be 7 minus x equals 3. So in the first couple of lessons, we looked at solving equations with unknowns in. Most of the time, those had positive coefficients. And by that, I mean coefficient is just the number in front of the x term. So here, the coefficient of x is minus 1. If I have another term like this, here the coefficient of x would be minus 3. Coefficient is just a fancy way of saying the number in front of something. So if the coefficient is negative, people get a little bit confused. We need to make sure we can deal with these questions as well. And the way we're going to do that is by trying to avoid the negative by making it positive. And remember, we have a left-hand side and a right-hand side to our equations, if you've watched the other videos. And whatever I do to one side, I must do exactly the same to the other. I can do whatever I like to one side, so long as I balance it by doing the same to the other. So to deal with this negative x term, we're actually going to add x to both sides. Because if we add x to both sides, then that means minus x plus x will give us 0x, so we'll have no x left. So that's on the left, so this minus x plus x gives us 0x, which is just nothing, so that will cancel. So on the left, I'll just be left with 7. But I've got to balance it. If I add x to the left-hand side, I've got to make sure I balance it by adding x to the right-hand side. So that will leave me with 3 plus x. Notice how the 3 and the x don't mix. 3 is a number, x is an x term. And so they're not like terms, so we can't add them together. They just have to sit as 3 plus x. Now the x is positive, and this should be like any of the other questions in our other videos. So now we can subtract 3 from both sides to get rid of that positive 3 on the right. And that should leave us with the x. And then we've solved our question. So we'll have x left on the right because we've taken that 3 away. But we've got to take 3 away from the left, which leaves us with 4, and then we always write the x first. And notice my equal signs line up down the page, left-hand side, right-hand side, and I'm always working down the page with this. So that's how we deal with a negative x. There are other methods for doing this, but this is a good way of learning how to do these to start with. Let's look at another one. So 6 minus 4x equals 2. So same kind of principle. We don't like the negative x term, the minus 4x, so we're going to make that x term positive. And we do that by adding 4x to both sides. And we put our working well out of the way of everything. The hints in red, when you get better, you won't ever write them in. They're just while you're learning this and while we start. So when we add 4x to the left-hand side, it cancels with the negative 4x. Minus 4x plus 4x is 0, so I'll be left with 6. But to balance things, I've got to add 4x to the right-hand side as well. So I get 2 plus 4x. I could write that as 4x plus 2 if I wanted to. These things are the same. Doesn't matter how you want to write it, as long as the term is right in front of it, or the sign is right. If it's positive, it has to stay positive. If it's negative, it stays negative. Then we've got the x positive. So how do we get this 4x by itself? We need to get rid of that 2 on the right. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. That will leave me with just 4x nicely on the right, because it cancels the positive 2. But I've got to subtract 2 from the left-hand side, and 6 minus 2 equals 4. And then last step, to get from 4x to x, it's multiplication by 4. So the opposite is division by 4. We're always trying to do the opposite or the inverse operation. 4 times x to get rid of that multiplication, we divide by 4. When I do that to the right-hand side, it cancels the times in by 4. So you just get x, which is what we want. On the left, 4 divided by 4 is just 1. And we can write the x first, x equals 1. So hopefully you're getting the idea. These x terms, just like numbers, we can add and subtract them to both sides, and it has the same kind of effect as if they are numbers. Remember, numbers will mix with other numbers fine. They'll simplify. Mix is a non-maths way of saying that. They simplify. X terms will simplify with other x terms. They're like terms, they'll combine together. Number 3, 9 equals 21 minus 2x. So this time, you'll have noticed I've written the x on the other side. The negative x term is now on the right. Again, it doesn't matter. If we want to make that, to deal with this negative x term, if we want to make it positive, we're going to add 2x to both sides. If I add 2x to the right, I must add 2x to the left. And the effect that that will have is that on the left, I'll have 9 plus 2x. Remember, it won't affect the 9. The 9 is a number. X terms won't affect it. If I'm adding to it, and then on the on the right-hand side, I'll get 21. The minus 2x and the plus 2x will cancel. Then my x term is nice and positive. I want to get rid of this positive 9, so I'll do that by subtracting 9 from the left. So I've got to subtract 9 from the right. And that will leave me with 2x on the left and 21 minus 9, which is 12 on the right. To get rid of multiplication by 2, I divide by 2, both sides. Always try to say both sides and think both sides in your head, because then you will hopefully do it to both sides. Some people forget to do it to one side and not the other. So divide by 2 on the left, I'll get x, and 12 divided by 2 on the right, which gives me 6. And then I've got my final answer. Number 4, one more like this, and then we'll have a look at a slightly different set of examples. So 16 minus 5x equals, 6 equals 16 minus 5x. And do remember, you can pause the videos if you want, just to kind of take stock, slow down, go through things, or if you want to write the question down and pause the video and then have a go at it and then have a look at my solution, that works quite well too. So it's good to practice without me doing it. There are worksheets available though, so do check out the examples and the answers too. So we're going to get the minus 5x positive. We don't like this negative 5, this coefficient of minus 5. So I'm going to add 5x to the right hand side and add 5x to the left hand side. Add it to both sides. So on the left, I'll have 6, add 5x. On the right, I'll just be left with 16 because the minus 5x and the plus 5x cancel. Then I need to get the 5x by itself, so get rid of this 6. To do that, we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. So we'll have 5x left on the right, on the left, and then 16 minus 6, which is 10 on the right. To get rid of our multiplication by 5, we'll divide by 5 on both sides. 5x divided by 5 is x. Cancels the multiplication by 5, and then 10 divided by 5 is just 2, so x equals 2. And remember, the x can be replaced with any letter here. If it's a y or an a or a c, it would work in exactly the same way. It would just be that letter the whole way through. So 4 examples there on dealing with some negative x terms. Second part of this video is about dealing with x's on both sides. Now that we've kind of got this string to our bow, hopefully we can deal with these x terms and add and subtract x terms to both sides. We should be able to deal with questions which have x's on both sides of the equation. So the first one to look at, number 5 in this video, is 4 plus 2x equals 7x minus 11. So a little bit more complicated because we've got two unknown terms. We've got 2x or positive 2x on this side and positive 7x on this side. Remember, no sign means it's positive. So the only way we can solve this is by ultimately, if we work our way through this, we'll have x equals on one side. So we don't want x's on both sides of the equation. So we can use some of the techniques used earlier in this video to get the x's on one side. No negative x terms in this, but if I want to combine the x's on one side, if I look at this plus 2x, if I subtract 2x from the left, and therefore I'll have to do it to the right. So if I subtract 2x from both sides, then on the left, I'll actually be left with 4. So it cancels that positive 2x. If I subtract 2x from the left, it will now mix or simplify with the 7x because they are like terms. They're the same letter. So 7x minus 2x will give me 5x. The minus 11 won't change. I'm adding or subtracting x's in this case. So any x terms will get affected by that, but any numbers or y terms, if there were any, say, they won't get affected. It will only affect the terms that have the same letter. And now you can see that I've kind of manufactured this, so I now have just one x term, which is much more simple, hence simplification, than having an x term on both sides of this, the 2x and the 7x. I could, if I wanted, minus 7x from both sides. I could do that. But you probably have to think about why that's not as good in this case. And the answer is because if I minus 7x, that's fine. But I end up with a minus 5x on the left, and that's just a little bit more tricky to deal with. Oh, sorry, my pen stopped working. There we go. So then I've got this to deal with, and it's just unnecessarily complicated. Okay, try and keep things simple. Math is tricky as it is, so try and keep things simple. So if I subtract the smaller x, then it will keep the x's positive, and it means I've probably got one less step in my answer, or one fewer step, I should say, and one thing that makes it slightly easier to deal with. And then from here, I can then get the 5x by itself by adding 11 to both sides to cancel that negative 11. So add 11 to the left, add 11 to the right, which cancels the minus 11. And then to get rid of that multiplication by 5, divide both sides by 5. I'll get 15 divided by 5 on the left, and 5x divided by 5 just cancels the timesing by 5. So I just get x, and then I can just rewrite it, because if 3 is x, then x must be 3. So that's how we deal with x's on both sides. A couple more examples of this, and then we're done. So number 6 is 13 plus 5x equals 3x plus 21. So again, when I'm looking at this, I want to get all the x's on one side of the equation. At the moment, I have a positive 5x term and a positive 3x. So to get everything on one side, I'm going to pick the smaller of those, which is the 3x. And if I subtract 3x from both sides, then on the left, I'll get the 13 won't change because it's a number and I'm subtracting 3x, so it won't affect numbers that are by themselves. 5x minus 3x is positive 2x. And again, that algebraic simplification video will help you if you're not sure about how to deal with those kind of things. On the right, taking away 3x cancels the 3x on the right, so I'll just be left with the positive 21, or just 21. And then from here, we can subtract 13 from both sides, leaves us with 2x on the left, and it leaves us with 8 on the right, 21 minus 13. And then to get rid of that multiplication by 2, you divide both sides by 2, divide the left by 2, you get x, divide the right by 2 is 8 divided by 2 is 4. And hopefully you're getting more used to this, which is why I'm going a little bit quicker now. The main thing here is that first step is kind of new in the lessons, where I'm adding and subtracting x to both sides. After that, the last couple of steps have already been covered. And this is the good thing with solving equations. You're always revising what you've learned if you're doing it properly, and therefore you should be much more likely to remember it, as well as having that set approach. So you should be able to speed up going through this. As you learn new layers, quite often those layers are just at the start, a slightly different starting point. But once I start solving, I get to use all those skills that I've learned previously to make life easy for me. Number 7. So 2 plus 4x equals 18 minus 4x. So this time I've got a negative x term. And again, if you think carefully about what we said, if we want to try and keep x's positive, things are just, the calculations are a little bit more simple. So here, if I want to get all the x's on one side, I kind of want to get the x's on the left side. So I can add 4x to both sides to cancel that negative 4x. When I add 4x to the left, the 2 won't change. It's just a number, it just sits there. 4x add another 4x will be 8x. That's my left-hand side. On the right, the 18 won't change because it's a number. Adding 4x won't affect that 18, but adding 4x to minus 4x will cancel that term out. And then from there, should be quite a nice question. Get rid of that positive 2 by subtracting 2 from both sides. Leaves me with 8x on the left and 18 minus 2, which is 16 on the right. And then divide by 8 on both sides to get rid of that multiplication by 8. X on the left, 16 divided by 8 is 2 on the right-hand side. Hopefully you're getting better at these kind of equations and you're backing the technique and happy with how it works. Number 8, 3 more questions, we'll go up to 10. 5 minus 3x equals 9 minus 7x. Again, looks a little bit more complicated because I've got x's on both sides and both those x terms are negative. But if I want to try and create a positive x term if possible, then minus 3x and minus 7x, if I added 3x to both sides, it would cancel the left. But if I add 3x to this, it'll stay negative. So it's not as helpful. It will work if I do it correctly, but it's not as easy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add 7x to both sides. So because I'm adding the bigger of the x's, that means on the left, minus 3x plus 7x will create a positive x term because of that. The 5 will just sit there. I'll just drop through nicely. Minus 3x plus 7x is 4x. And then on the right, the 9 won't change. Minus 7x plus 7x cancels this term. So if I can pick that bigger x term, I say kind of bigger x term, it's more negative in this case than minus 7x. But if I just think about how it's going to work when I do add that x term, will the x be positive or will it be negative, and how is that going to help me deal with this question? And then from here, I can subtract 5 from both sides to get rid of that positive 5. Subtract 5 from the left leaves you with 4x. Subtract from 5 from the right leaves you with 4. Then to get rid of that multiplication by 4, divide both sides by 4. X on the left, 4 divided by 4 is just 1. Number 9. 6 plus x equals 26 minus 9x. Again, think carefully about what will happen. If I choose to remove the positive x by subtracting x from both sides, this will stay negative, the minus 9x. So I'm better off here adding 9x to both sides to cancel that minus 9x. Because then on my left, I'll get 6, that'll sit there, but x plus another 9x is plus 10x. And that positive just makes it a little bit easier for me to deal with. On the right, the 26 will just sit, it won't change, it's a number, I'm adding 9x here. Minus 9x plus the 9x will cancel that x term out. Minus 6 from both sides to get rid of that positive 6. 10x is left on the left, 26 minus 6 is 20 on the right. And then to get rid of 10 times x, we want to divide by 10. Divide both sides by 10, x on the left, 20 divided by 10 is 2 on the right. And I would definitely be pausing the video once you've written this number 10 down and having a go yourself, because we've got quite a few examples now. 47 minus 3x equals 5x minus 9. Again, think about how you can try to keep your x's positive. Here, if I add 3x to both sides, I'll be left with 47 on the left. Minus 3x plus 3x is 0x, so it will just cancel out the 0 times anything is 0. On the right, 5x plus 3x is 8x. The minus 9 just drops through. Add 9 to both sides to get rid of that minus 9, which will give me 56 equals 8x. And then divide by 8 both sides to get rid of that multiplication by 8. 56 divided by 8 is 7. 8x divided by 8 will just give me the x. And then I can just write x equals 7. Hope you've enjoyed the video. This is x terms on both sides. Really, really useful skill. If you liked it, if it's been helpful, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe and watch more videos. Thank you. See ya.